Welcome to the Heart-Centered Hustle podcast. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Helwig, and I am your host. This podcast has been designed to shine light on how the top mortgage loan originators and influencers in real estate, leadership, and wellness from across the nation have built systems that led them to growth and freedom through meaningful change. In each episode, we will uncover how thought leaders in these industries paved their path to live a life without limitations. As a production, health, and lifestyle coach, I believe in the importance of implementing holistic approaches and developing habits in business and personal life that support and empower success and well-being. Through the theory of bio-individuality, we recognize that everyone has different wants, needs, and desires. By uncovering the things that support individual health and happiness, we have found that when implemented with intention, ultimately lead to success. As an advocate for creating flexibility and freedom in our lives, I am excited to welcome you into this space where we will discover how harnessing the power of a positive mindset and living in true alignment with our purpose will guide us to lead with our hearts and fulfill our greatest desires. Now, let's get started. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Heart-Centered Hustle podcast. I am so excited to be here today with Dr. Arthur Schwartz, who has created a profound impact in my life and every life of everybody that he touches. And I am excited to bring him on today to talk about legacy and leadership and just creating a wonderful life for ourselves and our communities and the people that we serve. And welcome, Dr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Jess, so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and exchange ideas with you.
Definitely. Well, our exchanging of ideas stemmed from the Oskin Leadership Institute at Widener University, and I'm forever grateful for that program and meeting you and just kind of being a part of the culture that you created there. So how did you get into leadership to begin with, and what led you to Widener?
Well, I was at a foundation for 15 years, the John Templeton Foundation, and suddenly an opportunity came for me to be the senior scholar at the United States Air Force Academy. Wow. Very prestigious position. It's sort of like I was assigned to the Center for Character and Leadership Development. It was the think tank for the entire Air Force on not just developing leaders, but developing leaders of character. And so here I am serving as the senior scholar, and I knew a lot about characters. So that's why they asked me to be the senior scholar. And I found myself surrounded by all these PhDs in leadership. And they would talk about servant leadership, authentic leadership, transformation leadership. I didn't really know the theories of those leadership qualities. And so every night after, a 12-hour workday, I'd go home and I'd go online and I'll never forget one of the people who started transformational leadership, such a powerful type of leadership. His name was Bruce Avolio. And I came back and I said, guys, have you read Bruce Avolio? And they all looked at me like, what are you talking about, Arthur? Yes, of course, and I just didn't even know
party.
They were like, he's like, I'm showing my age, like Mick Jagger to us. And I'll never forget, years later, I had a chance to meet Bruce, and I just said, okay, I've arrived. So that was my kind of baptism into leadership. It was at the Air Force Academy. And then all of a sudden, I got a phone call from the president of Widener University, told me about this endowed position at Widener University, being a professor of leadership studies. And I said, Jim, I'm a character guy. I know a little. Nope, that's what we're looking for. Wow. And that's how I ended up on my journey at the Oskin Leadership Institute, coming out of the Air Force Academy.
Wow. So then when you got to Widener, you had to just develop the curriculum and you had to pave your path there to really, kind of figure it out.
Yes, there was nothing. I wasn't replacing anyone. There wasn't a center already or an institute already in place. it was grounds. I just built everything. And, when you were talking about creating a culture, that's what I cared about. When people came to the Institute, they felt a certain way. And I just realized, I'll just say it, the virtue of hospitality is one that we don't think about a lot. And yet it's such an amazing virtue to when people come into your space, whether it's home, whether it's the office, whether it's this, what we're doing right now, your podcast, whatever it is, making them feel welcomed. And I tried so hard to do that. And then you're right, I had to create a certificate in leadership studies, ultimately a minor in leadership studies across the university. I loved my time there, Jess.
Well, I loved my time with you there. And just, it's funny you bring up hospitality, because when you started talking about, culture and all that encompasses that, there was a moment that I really noticed. I think it was when we were training for the leadership competition. I mean, I spent so much time in that Oskin Leadership Institute, but when we were training for the leadership competition, we were there at night, some nights, kind of going over everything and learning with you and just spending time. And you provided us snacks, specifically clementines. I don't know why I always remember those. And you would always play music for us. Yeah. As we came in and were getting settled, and you love to talk about your family and your son's passion for music. Yeah. And you shared stories about that. And, for us to connect with you and really understand who you were as a person was so important to us. And, not every classroom you go into at a university, you get that same feeling. And you just had such a profound impact on all of us. And, I love you, Dr. Schwartz. And
thank you so much.
You're welcome. But it was just so special. And, when you think about being comfortable and, hospitality, you did that for us. And at such a young age, I mean, I know we're adults in college, but still it felt really good. And that you were at home and, we were creating some really wonderful memories in that place.
Thank you. And for those who are listening and watching, 101 leadership, just the basic is feed them. If you food is so important. I mean, for so many reasons, it just brings us together. It just and then music. I mean, exactly. It's just it's not really difficult to understand how to, again, heart-centered, right? How to get people stop thinking here and start feeling here. And that's what we tried to do at the Oskin Leadership Institute.
That was a powerful mission, and we had a lot of fun in that space and with you. And
thank you.
Just thinking about young minds, even before college age, like developing leadership and character muscles are just as important as developing our physical muscles.
Yeah.
So in your experience, how do you think that we can help support younger generations in these areas, especially for those that might not have access to such an institute?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I have a one-word response. Habits. Habits of mind, habits of heart, habits of hands. And what I mean by habits is we know how important habits are to success.
Right.
Whether you want to be a leader or not, it doesn't matter. Habits really forge who we are, what we repeatedly do. So when I talk about habits of head, it's like, what am I thinking? What are my habits of mind? Am I putting in my mind negative thoughts? Or am I able to refute those negative thoughts by positive self-talk? Habits of mind. Habits of heart. What do I care about? How do I repeat to myself, and how do I feel? Oh, we're going to talk hopefully about purpose later on. Yeah. What fuels me? That's the heart. What motivates me? Habits of heart. What do I know about those habits? How am I feeding those habits? And then last is habits of hands, habits of behavior, habits of action. I can think about going to the gym later tonight. I want to go to the gym later tonight. Am I going to go? That's the habits of hands, action, behavior. So if you put those three together, if you really create a sense of who I am today, I'm going to be a better person tomorrow because I'm developing new habits of head, heart, and hands. That to me is the key to really just being a better self.
Yeah. Wow. So and I'm going to speak on behalf of myself here. So I've been going through a leadership development program, an emotional intelligence training program. And I'm 26 years old. And up until this point, until I started going through this experience, I didn't know what my purpose was. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about legacy, I had no idea. And, that's even something that we touched on at Oskin was what do you want your legacy to be? How do we develop this?
Yeah.
And I had to what I'm finding is I had to identify more with myself, more with my heart, and not be so focused on the external environment and what's happening around me, and trying to, create and control based off of what's happening outside. I was so disconnected from what was going on internally. And, for me to recognize that now and understand what my purpose is here and what I'm able to create and what is possible for me, I wasn't tapping into any of that because I wasn't resonating with anything that was inside of me. I was lost. And, I feel like having a timeline or, when we're graduating high school and everyone's like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? It's so confusing. And, I'm sitting here saying this to you today. And, in 5 years from now, I hope it's different. Like, I hope I continue. I know I'm going to continue to evolve and change. And, my purpose, today, it could be something totally different 3 years from now. Definitely. And, the development of that, I think, is just so important, and the support that you have around you to tap into what else is still inside of you and what your potential really is, because sometimes it's hard to identify that ourselves. And, It took me to go through this program, and I'm still kind of going through it, to figure out what that is for me and really understand what's possible, because we can choose to live our life in the driver's seat or in the passenger seat. And living out our purpose and in alignment with who we're supposed to be takes courage.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing to feel that and to share that.
It's so wonderful. But let me just unpack a little bit about what I heard you say right now in terms of your purpose. We can only find our purpose when we know how we soar with our strengths. So the fact that you're interviewing me right now has to be a strength of yours. It has to be something that you really want to do, that you're passionate about. And since you talked about high school, we don't spend any time in high school trying to figure out what our strengths are.
Right.
So for those who are listening, watching, go to viacharacter.org, VIA character.org. It's a free survey where you look at 24 strengths, and then they kind of show you what we would call your top 5 signature strengths. And these are the strengths that you soar with. So whatever you're going to be passionate about, wherever you're going to find your, what I would call noble purpose, it's going to be aligned with those strengths that you have. And so that's what we should be doing. And again, not just in high school, not just in college, I think in the workplace. I think leaders in the workplace need to really help their folks understand their character strengths.
Wow. I couldn't agree more. And I know something that you've talked a lot about is your moral compass. So how does that tie into this, and how can we help people understand what that is?
Oh, that's such a great question. You mentioned the word courage before, so I'm going to connect moral compass and courage. Moral compass is, well, let me just take a step back. Most of us, not all, but most of us were born into a religious faith. But I call that borrowed faith. It's the faith of your family. It's the faith of the church or the synagogue or the mosque that you belong to growing up. At some time in your life, in everyone's life, it has to go from borrowed faith to owned faith. Mom, Dad, that might have been your faith, but this is now, I own it. It's my faith. And it's the same thing with the moral compass. Mom, Dad, teachers, coaches, others say, this is important, that's important. But a moral compass is when you say, this is important to me. This is what navigates me. This is what orients me. This is the kind of person I want to be. Not my parents want me to be that way, my brother, sister, teachers, anyone else. This is what I stand up for. And again, when we know about the North Star, it's supposed to orient us. It's supposed to say, when you don't know where you are, you take out your compass and then you find your true north. And that's what this moral compass is supposed to be, whether family is your true north, whether honesty is your true north, whether empathy, or whether you don't have one North Star, you have several North Stars. The moral compass is not really important every day. It's when you're in that storm. That's when you pull out that compass and say, okay, what's orienting me right now? It's not that I don't want to get in trouble or I don't want to let my partner down, feel embarrassed. No, this is standing up who I want to be. The kind of action I want to take, because that's me. That's my identity. That's what a moral compass is really about, is orienting yourself to those, I would say, principles and virtues that really guide and orient the kind of person you want to be wherever you go, whatever you do.
Wow. I haven't heard you talk about that in such a long time. And did you know, Dr. Schwartz, where the word courage comes from?
Well, I know its French etymological root, C-O-U-R, is heart.
Yes.
So
that's what I was going to say.
I was going to ask you that question at the end. I was going to heart-centered courage. Yeah, I mean, I study courage, and so it's all about what the deepest part of your heart is telling you.
Yeah.
Is who you want to be and what steps you want to take, and this happens whether it's in high school with peer pressure or there's professional pressure,
Yeah.
And sometimes that pressure, wherever it comes from, family pressure, we have to withstand that. We have to stand up against that. And that's when your heart tells you what, again, I would use the word identity, at the core of who you want to be. And so I do know the root of courage, and we can talk more about courage at the end, but
Sure.
It's such an important area of research for me.
That's amazing. And I think just, in earlier episodes, I kind of talk about that and explain the root of it and the power behind that word alone and how it transfers into my life and the way that I want to show up. And that's the purpose of this podcast too. It's, giving people permission to go there and be vulnerable. And, being courageous is not as easy as it seems all of the time. And creating space for people to do that and create the life of, abundance and success is, I think that's how we get there, is being courageous and putting ourselves out there.
Well, you must be reading a lot of Brené Brown.
I love Brené, yes.
And by the way, Jess, she has a new HBO thing out on Atlas of the Heart. It just premiered a couple of days ago. I have friends who work with her, and they were texting me about it. So I don't know much. I just love the title, Atlas of the Heart. Yeah. So
that's incredible. Well, yeah, I love her, and Daring Greatly was probably is one of my top 5 favorite books of all time. So yeah, very cool. Well, maybe I can meet Brené Brown sometime.
That would be great.
That would be, oh my God, fangirl moment, big time. That's so funny. So, Dr. Schwartz, talk to me about the defining moment in your life where you declared your legacy.
I don't exactly remember when it was. I have always loved maxims, expressions, proverbs, aphorisms, just wise sayings that people pass on from one generation to another. I don't know why these words mean so much to me, but the first time I ever heard, and I was never a scout, but the first time I ever heard the scout expression, leave the campground better than you found it. Leave the campground better than you found it. I found my legacy right at that moment. So wherever I am, whether it's in shopping for, at Whole Foods, whether it's in a classroom, whether it's leading an organization, wherever I am, I want to leave that moment better than I found it. And that's my legacy.
I love that. And when you talked to me earlier, a couple weeks ago when we first reconnected, you told me about a book you were writing and how that's kind of been put on pause. But when I think about you, and I would love to hear more about that and have you share with our audience, but to hear you talk about leaving the campground, to leave our world a better place than you found it, is so profound, and it's so it's deep, and that feels like a huge opportunity there for all of us to kind of chime in and jump on that bandwagon, because what's possible for us when we make a conscious effort to create meaningful change in our world and in our communities and in our families is there. That's how the ripple effect begins. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, I have a blog at where, I lead an organization, Characterorg now, and based in DC. And I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago that I want to share with you that relates to this, because I understand change can come in many sizes and shapes, but I want to talk about small change. And my blog was, as I mentioned earlier, this via character survey of the 24 character strengths. I was part of the team that worked on that. I wasn't the leader of it. I was just contributing to it. The person who was leading it was Chris Peterson. And one night he and I went out for a beer, and he goes, "Arthur, what do you think about humor as one of the top 24 character strengths?" And I'm trained in philosophy, Jess, and I'm like, no, humor can't be one of the top 24. And I mean, I really argued against it. I said, the Stoics would never, Aristotle played, no, And he goes, "I think you're wrong. I'm going to put it in there." And he kept it in there. And what I mean by wherever you are, to leave the campground, better than you found it, sometimes it's just showing humor with people who need to smile. And I don't smile all that lot, so humor is not one of my top 24, by any means. But just the idea of laughter, of just lifting us up that way, in my way, is a legacy. And so years later, when over 5 million people had done this survey, I knew at that moment that humor was one of the 24. And we can leave this, wherever we are, better by just sometimes practicing humor if we feel it's a strength of ours. So I wanted to take that detour just to kind of let you know, change happens in a lot of ways. Sometimes it's just a smile or making someone laugh.
It's those small acts of kindness that go a really long way.
Yeah.
I absolutely. So I know I mentioned a little bit about your book. I would love to hear a little bit more about that and what your intentions were or are around that, and kind of sharing your story, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I've always, since I was at the Air Force Academy, I was fascinated by the study of moral courage. Why some people stand up, why some people speak out, when others stay silent or look the other way. And I particularly wanted to understand that during adolescence, so, 15 to 22, that kind of place, even though I had written a lot about courage in the workplace, which is a little bit different, but I thought for my book, I would come back to my own area of research of adolescent moral development. And what we know about courage is that there are sort of 5 qualities about it. One is the positive traits, that if we really empathize, when we see someone hurting, that's going to motivate us to be courageous. Or if we're conscientious, right? We never go through that rolling stop sign, right? We stop, right? And we're conscientious. Well, when you see somebody break the rule, you speak up because so understanding your positive traits, or one of the ways that I have come to understand why some young people speak up, because that's just their identity. That's their temperament. That is their personality. The second is the positive emotions. I've talked to so many young people when they get angry or enraged, or again, when they see that's not fair, and so the emotions also kind of tell us what propels or what will fuel courage. But the last one I'll talk about right now is goals and values. Talked about moral compass before. If you don't have the moral compass, then hey, not my problem, because that's not what you're standing for. And then the other is the goal around your identity. So my identity right now for so many years has been as a father. I will do anything in terms of a courageous act. I mean, we're seeing this in Ukraine, how parents are acting courageously for their children, or some are acting courageously to defend their nation, right? Your role identity, the accountants, the engineers, the doctors who are listening right now, you have a professional role and a professional identity that will say, no, we don't do that sort of thing here in our profession. And so those are some of the qualities that I'm looking at in terms of trying to understand why someone at 16 who sees someone else stealing, lying, or cheating would say, man, why are you doing that? As opposed to, hey, that's not my business. Yeah. And that's what fascinates me, is what that small group of people who don't believe, to get along, go along. I'd like to learn more about how they think differently.
Wow. And so in the book, what's the book called?
Well, I haven't titled the book yet,
okay.
Because I pressed the pause button, and I'm working on different titles right now, but I failed retirement, Jess, so I was going to write the book in retirement, and now I'm leading an international organization, so I haven't come back to write it yet, but it's going to get done. It's important to me to tell the stories of young people who stand up and speak out.
It's amazing. Well, we will definitely be recapping with you again sometime soon. And I think, Dr. Schwartz, before we wrap it up, I would love to learn a little bit more and have you share with the audience about what you're doing at Character.org and the impact that that organization has on our world.
Well, thank you. Character.org started in 1995. I've been involved in it for many, many years. I sat on the board for 10 years before the board asked me to be president of the organization. It really is an advocate for all things character. We stand up for character in families. We know that parents and families are a young person's primary character educator. But also we stand up for character in schools, in sports teams, after school programs, in the workplace, as well as internationally. We try to be thought leaders. We try to say, okay, what is character? We could talk about that if you like. There are 4 dimensions of character that we really reinforce. But mostly what we try to do is to inspire and equip people to foster character, whether it's with their children, with their students, with their colleagues in the workplace, their coaches, coaches who inspire character in their players. But the last thing we do is we want to be champions for character. We want to celebrate. We want to recognize men and women who across the world in all these different areas who say, look, character-based leadership, that's where it begins. Because I really do believe that. And we want to sort of shine the spotlight on those men and women, whether they're in schools, whether they are coaching sports teams or CEOs. We really think it's important for people to see to see models who really say it's not just about getting to graduation or getting to the bottom line. It's about who we are as people.
Wow. Goodness
in action.
Wow, amazing. So are these programs that another organization can come to the website? Of course, we will leave that information in the show notes.
Thank you. Character.org. It's not hard to remember. We changed our name about 10 years ago. I was on the board at that time. And we're just excited. There's so many resources there. You can also get my blog. I post, and I just love sort of sharing ideas with people about what I call character development. I do want to say one thing.
Sure.
There's a big debate in my world about, well, by the time you get to college, your character is forged. It is what it is, and I don't believe that. I really don't. So if you're listening, if you're watching, know with habits of, I'm going to say it again, habits of head, mind, habits of heart, and habits of hands, we can really change who we are. And we can really shape who we are in terms of that was before, but this is now going forward. I'm a different person because I'm going to be practicing these, qualities of character.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing, Dr. Schwartz.
You're welcome.
So as we wrap up, I always have a couple wrap-up questions, rapid-fire questions. So what is on the horizon for you in your life and your business?
Well, I, as you know, care deeply about courage, but I've gotten into another area of research that has just fascinated me, and that's goal setting. So I just encourage everybody listening and watching, if you're not setting goals, start. Because, everybody, Angela Duckworth is, somebody I funded when I was at Templeton. And, her notion of grit, we just think it's perseverance, hard work, determination. No, it's perseverance and passion. There's the purpose. Perseverance and passion toward a long-term goal. So I'm trying to understand going forward why goal setting is so important to us. And I have physical health goals, I have writing goals, I have leadership goals that I've set for myself. And so I think I'm a goal setting creature, and I just want to understand more about that. So that's sort of on the horizon for me, is to learn more about the promise of goal setting.
Awesome. Very cool. I have to say that is an area of my life that I would also like to continue to work on, because it's funny how we can get so distracted by everything that's in the now, even though, we're living in the present, and that's very important, but, we need to be a little bit forward thinking and figure out what it is that we want and where we want to go, and how fun is it to look back after a whole year. And, I know everyone has their feelings about, New Year's resolutions and that kind of thing. But I find that there's so much excitement around that time. And, it's fun to reevaluate things and start new things. And thank you for sharing that. I'm excited to hear more about that.
Hey, you can even start with just the goal of making your bed every morning.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be big goals. It's just, this is the habits, these are what we want to create. And so it's connected to habits. And I just think it's a way for us to live into our best possible self.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I believe you mentioned earlier you are also going to be a grandfather soon,
Oh, I didn't
right?
think that was going to come up. Yes, we just heard my older son, not the musician, but the screenwriter. He and his wife been married for 5 years. We've been patient, and our patience, my wife and I's patience, the virtues being rewarded. They're due in September, and we're just really excited. I know I was born to be a dad, but I can't wait to spoil as a granddad.
Oh, Dr. Schwartz, I love that. You are just glowing right now talking about that. That's
Thank
so
you.
exciting. Oh, I love that. So, one more thing that I'm curious about. Who inspires you?
I'm going to say two people real briefly. I'm here talking to you right now as president of Characterorg because of a man named Sandy McDonald. Most of your readers and watchers and listeners probably have flown in a McDonnell Douglas aircraft owned now by Boeing. And so I met Sandy many years ago, and he just became a mentor to me. He continues to inspire me. He founded Character.org. And it's just really important that I continue his legacy, the seeds that he planted in this position I'm in now as president. I want to say also, I started, as I talked to you about like sayings and expressions, I once asked Sandy, what was something you repeat to yourself, positive self-talk? And he said, conceive it, believe it, achieve it. And that was it, like 6 words just blurted out of him. And so I say that to myself all the time. Conceive it, believe it, achieve it. So that's a gift that he's given to me, and I really do. He inspires me. But the other person is my wife. She just lifts me up to be my best self every day. She just knows that is what I want to be, and she just supports me in that, and I'm inspired by her, but also the fact that she still laughs at my bad jokes.
Aw, so much gratitude for that.
Yeah.
So sweet, Dr. Schwartz. Thank you for everything. And before we head out, this is the third time I say before we finish up, but let everyone know where they can find you and get in contact with you, because I know that I'm sure we will have people that are interested in reaching out.
Thank you. Well, Character.org. You can also email me at arthur@character.org. I am not really present on social media as much as my team would want me to be at Character.org, so email would be the best way to contact me. And again, whether it's around positive self-talk, habits, goal setting, courage, I would love to hear from anyone and just continue the conversation. And Jess, let me just say, I am so proud to have been your professor, have been somebody, your coach, your leadership coach. And it just means a lot to me that you are doing this, that you are speaking to your best self. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Schwartz. So much love for you. And I appreciate your time. And I know we will definitely have you back. We have a lot more to discuss, and can't wait to hear an update on that book.
Thank you, Jess.
You're welcome. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Heart-Centered Hustle podcast. As always, I've been your host, Jessica Hellwig. Don't forget to visit us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or Spotify, and check out my YouTube page. If you're a real estate agent or a loan officer and are looking for a change of pace or looking to grow your business, reach out to me at jhellwig@annie-mac.com. That is JHELWIG at Annie, ANNIE-MAC.com, or shoot me a text at 610-301-9706. And you can also find my contact info in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.